Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Karen. Thanks for tuning in. I believe we're in July. If it's after July, I'm sorry. You all know I tape way ahead of time. So, no, we should be in July. So, August, I'll see you at the Portland, Maine Comedy Festival. I will see you in Ann Arbor in October. Somewhere in September, I'll be peeking in your windows. I don't know what's going on. Please leave me a 5-star review or a 2, whatever you think. It just helps me get the podcast out there. And today, paranormalkaren.com, karenrontowski.com, all the same. Today, thrilled to have a friend that I started out in comedy with, who does all kinds of paranormal things. We're going to talk about his great web series, amongst other things, conspiracy, UFOs, and whatever comes up. Jeff Thill, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Karen. Man, I'm so excited to be on your show. This is going to be a blast. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the same topics that we both, get a kick out of, and accidentally probably scratch the surface a little too far a couple of times. So
exactly.
Looking forward. Yeah.
And I want to start out because first, I want to start out with Majestic 12 because, folks, comedy paranormal is rare. Well, this is kind of sci-fi paranormal, right? Or sci-fi comedy.
Sure, absolutely. It is it's a sci-fi concept that I came up with based on research that I did into UFOs, based on me thinking it was all a funny joke when I was doing stand-up comedy with you back in the 90s. So there you go. That's the the lineage there. Yeah.
That's awesome. And Dean Lacrone, our friend Dean Lacrone, is in it. And whoever he's the only actor I know, but everybody is really good. And it just looks so good. Dean blew me away. He is a great actor.
He really is. Yeah, no, he kills it. And being a web series, and each of these are meant for short attention span theater. Every episode's only 3 to 3.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. I'm almost done with the first season, and by gosh, the first season is something that you can, literally take your phone into the bathroom and be done with the first season by the time you get out of there. So that's the way we like it, right? Nowadays, short attention span.
That's right. But you know what? People have no idea how much work goes into 3 minutes.
Oh my goodness. And thank God, I think this is the perfect format for me because that's about my attention span. So yeah, no, it takes about a week to do a 3-minute episode. And oh my goodness, I can't even imagine doing an hour of a full episode of something. Right. So
I know.
Yeah, having a blast.
Wonderful. So I think the English folks have it right with that. The new series I love is Fleabag, and they do six episodes, or it's always very short with the English, and that one's like 22. But enough about that. So Jeff, I was never into UFOs until about a year ago, and but you've been into them for a while. How did you get started?
So it all goes back to, again, audience members, around the time that I met Karen. We all hung out, amongst other places, when we were all budding comedians back in the 90s. At the Comedy Store in La Jolla, California. Mm-hmm. And when I was there, a mutual friend of ours and a fellow comic, Mark Murdoch, who Karen knows that name very well.
Yes, I haven't heard from him in a while.
He's still around, doing fine. So Mark Murdoch, very funny guy. He said to me, Jeff, you got to check out these UFO conventions. I just went to one. And back in the day, guys, UFO conventions literally was people practically wearing tinfoil hats, selling videotapes and, by gosh, cassette tapes for those of you that were born back then, in little booths and trying to impress each other with, darker and darker conspiracies about the government and the UFOs and the moon landing. And he said, the reason you got to do this is because it's really funny and it's a good source of material. So I took the dare and went to a couple of these, and he was right. I mean, I hate to say it, laughing at other people's expense. There were some true characters at those shows. Well, you always get the fringe.
You always get the fringe.
Oh, that's all it is. I mean, it should just be called the Fringe, show. I mean, that's really all it is fringe folks. But, there was this guy named Dr. Stephen Greer.
Oh, yes.
And for those folks in the ufology world, you might know that name. And this is back in the 90s. And he was, an emergency room physician. He wasn't trying to sell a book. He just was a guy that would drink bourbon late at night as a doctor in North Carolina. And he would get, military industrial complex, guys that were retired, and they would start to have a few drinks and tell stories. And suddenly he realized, wait a minute, UFOs are real, and there actually is government programs, and there's a, dark conspiracy on how it's kept secret. He couldn't believe it himself. But then he started collecting witnesses and gathering data, and he was at these UFO shows and saying, gosh, if anyone could please help me put together this witness testimony. And by the way, Karen, we're not talking about dudes on their ranch that saw something and got probed by aliens. We're actually talking about,
that stereotype went with Cosby. That went with Cosby, yes.
Yeah, we're talking about brigadier generals and vetted military that are in NORAD and folks that are in the FAA and guys that were on nuclear aircraft carriers. I mean, people that have nothing to gain and everything to lose by telling these stories. And I said, gosh, I work up in Hollywood part-time, and I do editing. Maybe I could help you. And I thought, I don't know, man, this guy seems kind of legit. Let me see if this is real. And he said, sure, Jeff, I'll take you on your offer. Right. And then I forgot all about it, Karen, for 2 months. And my wife was having our second child. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about, babies, not thinking about UFOs. And ding dong, a package is delivered. And it's about 200 hours of witness testimony on little mini DV tapes, for those of you that remember that format. And I just popped one in and started going through it literally in this little nursery, which is a weird juxtaposition, right? You're supposed to be thinking about Disney characters and your cute little kid being born. And meanwhile, I've got guys that are vetted military professionals saying, this is all real, and it's been real for the last 50 or 60 years, and here's how it works. And I'm telling you.
And I have a quick question.
Sure.
With this, were you not supposed to say the names, or was this sort of because at that time, like now, it's sort of out there, but was this like secret stuff? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So some of these guys were definitely breaking oaths. Now, here's the thing. This was the quote unquote disclosure project. That's what we called it. So everyone that gave us testimony did it under the understanding that we are going to for sure make this as public as possible. And we did. And you can still look at it on the internet. And we actually had a press conference in Washington, and people really did show up and listen to it. But the problem is, once you hear this amazing story, it really kind of rewrites history for the last 50 years. And it makes you go, wait a minute. And so I don't think the press really knew what to do with it, because how do you get this bombshell of information and then even begin to process it, right? Mm-hmm. So it was just sort of a weird shock to everybody, I guess. But I'm telling you, when I got done watching all that testimony, I was just in a daze. I was stunned. I walked around for months. My wife can tell you, just absolutely flabbergasted. My entire worldview was completely flipped upside down.
Well, I know that one time on Art Bell, he did talk to a UFO guy, and the guy said, all right, let's say you're going to release all the information. What are you going to tell people? All right, so there's things abducting you that we can't stop, and you'll never know when they come, and blah, blah. Like, it was terrifying. But, I have been on board since the beginning. I was born I believe everything. I believe there's little elves making cookies in my kitchen right now. I am all in.
Nice. I love it.
But it is that's pretty fascinating that do tell. I'm just going to let you talk because this is fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, totally. So now here was the interesting thing. What a lot of us have heard about regarding aliens. We all think about cows being, brought up into and brought up in a beam of light. We all think about probes and being brought on board and dissected or experimented on. Now, here's the interesting thing. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen. None of that ever came across my radar. This was a completely different story. Now, keep in mind, this is about 100 witnesses, all high-ranking or relatively high-ranking military professionals or private sector or military-industrial complex. And then a couple of guys were what we call spooks. And what that means in the military world is somebody who doesn't really have an identity, that works in black ops, that works for the military-industrial complex, and in some cases doesn't even have fingerprints. So this would be like a Jason Bourne type of a character, and I met a couple of those guys.
A real quick question. Do you know how you get rid of fingerprints? Because I have an awful problem on my windshield. I always put my hand on it. No, just kidding. Do you know how to,
just an emery board and a lot of persistence.
Really?
That's
Is that
all
true?
You really need. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. You can just keep going. I think if you just rub a little longer than you would probably want to, you will finally get to a point where you have no fingerprints, at least for about 2 days. Yeah.
Wow. So or burning it on the stove or something, or would that? Wow. Okay. All right. Now,
that might permanently solve your problem, as it would melt it. Yeah, that's true. So
that's interesting because I'm always trying to put together a podcast on how you could fake your own death, and it's almost impossible now.
Right.
Almost impossible. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And I think what we're doing is we're starting to write a Black Mirror episode as we're talking right now. So I think that's the road we're going. Yeah, Majestic 13. Yes. Okay. I almost called the show Majestic 13. It's funny. I was going to say the punchline, but it wasn't actually very funny at all. Here's the story in a nutshell. If you were to say, Jeff Thill, what is the story? How does this work? What would you tell us if you had a minute to explain the UFO phenomenon? And here's what I would say. Quite some time ago, 60, 70 years ago or more, we were able to retrieve crashed UFOs and extraterrestrial technology. And we were able to start backwards engineering it, meaning taking it apart to see how it works and how we could seed that into American society. And this would be not just the Roswell crash, but many other crashes. Now, some crashes were even apparently, according to these guys, created by us, where we actually learned how to target extraterrestrial craft.
You mean we shot them down?
Shot them down, not necessarily shot them, but we were targeting them with, believe it or not, very strangely, highly concentrated radar would bring these things down. And I can get into that in more detail, but long story short, we were able to backwards engineer their technologies. And then we created this thing called the military industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned everybody about when he about this.
Oops,
and here's how that works.
You broke up just for a second. Okay. And I want to, and this is where we got the stealth, right?
Sure. Night vision, fiber optics, stealth, and a whole bunch of other technologies came from that. Okay. Including, by the way, the transistor.
Wow. Okay. And I interrupted you. So you were talking about the military industrial complex. Go ahead.
Sure. So for those of you that don't understand what that is the military can hide their secrets from the government through corporations, and corporations have certain protections, right? Mm-hmm. So and then the corporations can hide their secrets from prying eyes through need to know and national security with the military. So this marriage of the military and industrial complex, corporations and the military, means that things go down a rabbit hole that can never be found. So,
I want to unpack that just a little bit, because I know that Area 51 was originally owned by Lockheed Martin.
Sure. Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin, and that is called S4 Groom Lake. Absolutely. And so, everyone needs to know, here's the first thing everyone says, right, Karen? Well, gosh, how could the government keep it secret? The government's stupid and bureaucratic and full of a bunch of dum-dums, and they can't keep anything secret.
Yes,
look at the DMV. So the answer is the government isn't keeping it secret, because the government that you and I know knows nothing about this. It's all need to know, black ops, and 17 levels deep, and national security oaths. So this is not under the purview of the president. Money is not voted on by you and I. It is simply funneled illegally to these projects that nobody has knowledge of.
Okay.
So there you go.
Can we do that backwards for a second? And here's
Sure.
what it is. Okay. So I work for the CIA and I don't have fingerprints, or I work for the military and I'm what they call spooks. I don't have fingerprints. Nobody knows who I am. And I, through funding of, say, somebody like a Lockheed Martin, get into doing investigations, find out how to levitate from alien stuff, and then I give that information to no one.
That's right. And you'll get things like this, even weirder, Karen. It goes even weirder, which is, hey, I'm a general in the Army. Now that if you come up to me as Karen and you say, hey, General, what about the UFOs? And I say, Karen, trust me, if there really were UFOs and extraterrestrial technology, I would know about it. Now, Here's the thing. That guy is full of ego. He thinks that he should know about it. But if you go 2 levels beneath him, right, someone that reports to him, that person is completely in the loop, but his superior isn't. Again, it's all need to know. So it's a real embarrassment for the folks that are in charge of the military. They don't know anything about this.
Interesting. I did do a military tour up in Greenland, and Greenland is where Echelon originally was. And they showed us that, that machine that took in all the information. And they, I would ask, it was very interesting. I think they were doing UFO work there, because I would ask, and the higher up it went, like the guy that was in top charge, I said, are there UFOs? And he was like, no one here said UFOs. You didn't hear this from us. Very official answer. Same thing from the guy beneath him. Then as we go down the line to the guys that literally used to watch the radar, this is a while ago, watch the radar of the top of the earth, the North Pole and stuff, they go 4 or 5 a day. We don't know what that is. We don't know what that is. So that's very interesting. What a great, that's brilliant. I never heard that. The top guy doesn't have to know.
Right. So that's the beginning of it, is how can the government keep this secret? Again, the answer, they're not. They don't know anything. The people that know are 17 levels deep. Now, question number 2, why in the world would this not just be disseminated? What's the big secret? Why can't we tell people about this? Here's why. It's economic, and it has to do with control. And I'll explain. Very early on, we discovered that these devices work on propulsion systems that basically draw from the vacuum of space with no moving parts, non-polluting, and can be made for next to nothing in terms of the amount of money. So how can I release this? How can I check it out? Here's anti-gravity.
Okay. You know what? 2 words cut out. You said what kind of systems?
So sorry, they're called over unity or free energy systems, right? So these propulsion systems and these energy systems on these craft, they are over unity, meaning free energy systems, right? Mm-hmm. With no moving parts. And to release this to the public, to talk about these UFOs would ultimately lead down this path where we would have to admit that we don't need power grids. We don't need utilities. We don't need gas and oil. We don't need that kind of electricity. We don't need huge multi-trillion-dollar infrastructures. We can just build these little devices that can power someone's entire house or city with no moving parts, no pollution, instantly. And you can see how that would completely upset the apple cart, right?
Absolutely.
Suddenly, third world countries would become first world countries, not to mention, imagine your enemy having anti-gravity, being able to instantly blip over to your side of the ocean, so on and so forth, right? So it's all about control, and that's why it's kept secret.
That's interesting because that's the one thing everybody is really, there's a couple of things everybody's worried about, but it's the grid. It's our electrical grid here.
That's one of many. You're absolutely right. Sure.
God.
One of many. Yeah. Now, there's so many facets to it that really surprised me. Number 1 was how the secrecy happens, which I just explained.
Oops, and I lost you again. Shoot, is this my phone? Hang on. Hang on a second. You know what? I'm going to do a commercial and I'll be right back. I have a new favorite thing. It's my ring from Copper Case Jewelry. I did a show in Colorado, met a wonderful young man named Casey who told me he made crystal jewelry. So you know I'm in. That's all I had to hear. He makes raw crystal jewelry using copper electroformulist techniques. Do I know what that means? No. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing those words correctly. All I know is I love the final product. It has become my favorite ring. And I know you're thinking, crystal ring, that sounds kind of clunky and sharp. Is it going to be heavy, or is it going to get caught on my sleeve every time I put my coat on? Absolutely not. It is the most delicate, perfect size ring. I even wear it through yoga, and it's uncomfortable to wear jewelry in yoga. Not this. You got to check out Casey's pieces. Go to @29 Coppercase on Instagram, and you can see all his new work. You can also email him if you want something special at 29coppercase@gmail.com. Check it out. I know you're going to love it. Hey, folks, sorry about that. I think I need a new phone or whatever, or the government's messing with us. But, okay, I know. That's always a great excuse for everything. So we said the grid was going down, and then it went silent. So go ahead. You were saying that's one of the threats. Okay.
Oh, sure.
And you got to number two. There was a number one and a number two, and then
Oh, sure. So, yeah, and folks, if you didn't catch it, the number one thing everyone wonders, gosh, how could they have kept it secret? We just explained that. Military-industrial complex, black ops, need to know. Why would they keep it secret? They don't want to reveal energy and propulsion systems to the world that would upset the world's control mechanisms. And then number three, the weirdest thing that I discovered was there's a nuclear connection to UFO sightings. Very strange. Ever since the 50s, when we started, actually late 40s, when we started monkeying around with atomic experiments and doing, nuclear and atomic testing, suddenly we had a wave of UFOs visiting us. And my understanding from these witnesses is whenever you light off or ignite a nuclear device, it sends a ripple effect through multiple dimensions across the universe and across the solar system. And it's almost like an alarm to all other types of life forms and, species that are in existence here all throughout, again, our galaxy and other galaxies. So we found, or these guys found, or at least our witnesses found out that nuclear missile silos would constantly get visited by alien spacecraft, nuclear aircraft carriers. And one of these guys is a guy who would go to every single base in the world that was owned by American interests that had any kind of nuclear energy or nuclear power. Everyone, without exception, had multiple and continued visits by extraterrestrial craft. In one case, there was a gentleman who was in Malmstrom Air Force Base, and they had 27 different, nuclear missile silos. And he got a report from above ground. We've got a UFO. It's hovering right above the base. Suddenly, all missiles go down. Bump, 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 bump. Inert. You can't do anything. No power. It was a show of force. The aliens literally shut down the missiles. And then, as soon as they left, bump, 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 they powered up again.
I have a weird, cause like I said, I believe everything. And I was listening to a book about a near-death experience about this guy that went to a dark place, and then he actually ended up meeting God. And it was during the time that they were all worried that Reagan was going to start a nuclear war or something like that.
Sure.
And I know I'm way off, but this really does wrap up here. And he's asked God about that. And God said, I will never let you set those off again, or I'll never let a nuclear war start, which is very interesting because I believe that we're in these all different dimensions. There's God in all these different dimensions. Maybe we are the jerk faces of the universe that are like, hey, let's see if this explodes. And like you said, every other dimension is like, no.
Oh yeah. From what these guys.
Oops, I lost you again. Hang on. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Sure. That was absolutely correct from what I've been told. In addition to that, we had a guy, the USS Roosevelt, and they were out in the middle of exercises in the middle of the ocean, and they got a solid radar contact on a craft that was over 300 feet wide. However, they couldn't see it visually. They dispatched jets. The jets couldn't get a visual, but everything picked them up on radar. So there was a solid object on radar hovering above the carrier, but nothing visual. Then the entire carrier went dead in the water. Dead in the water. Now, this is a gigantic, major, critical nuclear asset for the United States. Dead in the water is a big, big effing deal. And they just had to play it out until the thing finally left, and suddenly they regained power. Wow. All documented, right? And this happened again and again and again. And I think that's a really interesting side to the UFO, story that a lot of people never heard.
Yes, and you know what else? This was the latest. Somebody put this very well. I thought this explained it. So they're in the next dimension, but they're here. So it's not like they're not here. Somebody explained it as it's like a fan that's spinning really fast, and you can see through it, but the fan is there. Is that is that a good way to explain what it seems?
So it's my understanding from what I could glean from these witnesses is that it's kind of similar to what you might imagine in the Star Trek world or even the Star Wars world. And what I mean by that is there are all sorts of life forms. The universe is teeming with all kinds of intelligent life. Some may be a little more ethereal and transdimensional. Others may appear malevolent, but they're really not. They just don't have. You have to imagine, you guys in the audience there, if something really has an alien culture and is truly alien, they're not going to have the same morality thought process as we are as humans, right? So you're not trying to be horrible or inhumane to an ant or a hamster, but you might not treat it the same way or with the same respect that you would a fellow human, right?
Right, like
so,
the kitten doesn't understand being at the vet.
There you go. And so to say that the alien or the aliens are this way or that way is kind of silly. It's almost like looking at the entire, millions and millions of species that exist on Earth and saying this is what all animals do. Well,
right.
It's just kind of you're already doomed to fail if you're going to look at it that way.
Yeah, people hear me talk a lot about elemental spirits and fairies, which it's like they're not on our level of politeness. They are it's a whole different culture, so to speak.
Yeah, right. And we can't try to anthropomorphize things like that. It makes no sense. Except
I know
for us, right?
I know you're kind of more of a facts guy, and I'm like going, that's fairies, and you're kind of like, okay, we'll keep going.
Well, no, you know what, Karen, you know what's so funny is that you would think that, but that's not true, because I know you guys in the audience here listening to this, when you hear fairies and elves and things like that, or
they've heard plenty from me, so they're all in. I think we
all can giggle a little bit and or believe in it, but I'm telling you, once you start to again go down this little matrix, take the red pill, if you will, and once you realize what has truly happened over the last 60 years, it really rewrites your entire reality.
Yep.
And it leaves room for almost anything that you can imagine to be real.
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely mind-blowing. And so when I realized that, oh my God, this really is true. This all really happened there. And you guys, just to bring it back up to the present day, now that we know kind of sometimes why they're here and how we keep it secret and all that other stuff, and why we keep it secret, I'll tell you one final thing here, which is it's not going away. Mm-hmm. And humans have been able to rebuild or recreate a lot of these technologies. And it's really infuriating because we can completely solve the energy crisis. We can solve pollution. We can solve the climate issues right now with these technologies, but they are so locked away in black projects that it's just never going to happen.
Right.
And that's really the sad, tragic thing about the whole story.
You know, I'm going to have Mark Price on here talking about chemtrails, and I put one picture up about chemtrails, and I said something, and I never got mansplained as bad. Like, people don't mansplain me. Karen's nuts. We don't care. Boy, did they go after me on the chemtrails, and they kept saying, "Well, I'll believe that when the people in the government start breathing different air," and I'm thinking, no, first of all, the exact opposite of that is fluoride in the water. Nothing is worse for your health than fluoride, and the government's putting it in the water, and they know it, and they're drinking that water. So that argument doesn't hold. Like, well, when the government has that, I'll agree. I totally. I guess I'm 2 points behind.
There is something almost as dangerous as fluoride, but not quite, which is mercury. And yet fluoride is, many times over more dangerous than mercury. So yeah, you're completely right on that.
Yeah. And so as for them saying it or them having, I don't know. But do you, not to go off topic, but just real quick, do you believe that we are alien hybrids?
100%.
Okay.
I won't say 110% because that's not a real number, but 100% absolutely, completely convinced. Yes.
I did meet a woman at a UFO conference, and it's on one of these podcasts. And in fact, I have a funny joke because she was telling me, she says, "You have alien DNA. The Palladians, they're beautiful. They have smooth skin. They're peace loving. You're not one of those." And she told me to pick up a book, and it was a list. She said, "Look up Orion." And I looked up. It was almost unbelievable, the description of an alien from Orion, right down to they're the only ones that have a sense of humor and they're vegan. And then I was like, what's going on? And there's these little pieces I put together, but I can't believe that. I think we all are just pieces of that.
Well, I'll tell you, I needed a little more convincing on that subject. And so, completely separate from the Disclosure Project, you guys, I ran into a gentleman when I was working in Hollywood. He's an author, and his name is Lloyd Pye, P-Y-E, Lloyd Pye. And he wrote a book called Everything You Know Is Wrong. Now, there are a couple of books out there with the same title. Another one is a very funny joke book that talks about a bunch of silly things, But this one really traces man's genealogical history. Okay. And when you cannot possibly read that book cover to cover without just bumping into walls and being stunned like I was on the UFO subject for weeks at a time. You will not believe what you're about to read. I highly recommend everybody read it. And I'll just give you the teaser and the nutshell here. If this was a trailer, I will tell you that the ancient Sumerians, pretty much considered one of the first actual real civilizations on the planet Earth, had a mythology, just like the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians. They believed that these gods came down from heaven, and we've always thought of it as, oh, ha, ha, primitive people making stuff up about the stars and how cute and quaint. Well, it is 100% grounded in all.
Oh, stupid phone. Okay, there you go. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, say that again. Yeah. Stupid phone went out.
It's the Sumerian mythology of these gods coming down and creating humans is really grounded in a whole bunch of factual data that we have discovered later. And again, the punchline here, if you will, is that a alien race called the Anunnaki, or the Anunnaki, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Anunnaki or Anunnaki. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
I've heard Anunnaki. So that yeah.
They came from a 12th planet, if you will, a rogue planet that was itself in trouble. They had almost all but burned out their atmosphere through pollution, and they realized that the only way to recover their ionosphere, I think it's the ionosphere, and again, forgive me, anyone out there, but they wanted to take gold dust and gold particles and shoot them into their outer atmosphere to shield the sun's harmful effects and hopefully keep their planet from getting destroyed, right? From giant holes in the ozone.
Mm-hmm.
So this was going to have to be a phenomenal amount of gold, of which they did not have on their own planet. They came to Earth, and they took the existing hominids these sort of monkey ape-like creatures that were walking around Earth. These are not humans, and mixed it with their DNA, the Adamu, or Adam, they called it, and created. And by the way, the female in this species, this race of aliens, were the scientists in their culture, and they created man, which was a monkey alien hybrid. As funny as that sounds,
No, I believe it.
Just smart enough to be a good slave that would listen to them, and programmed for religion, programmed to be a follower that believed in religious dogma, that would believe in a god and goddesses, and would listen to what they said. And they were told to go into these mines and mine for gold. And by the way, those exact mines do exist exactly where the Sumerians said they would be. And there's all kinds of supporting evidence that says, my God, this may have actually really happened. Wow. Including the fact that the Sumerians knew not only every planet in our solar system, many of which only became visible to us through telescopes in modern history, but also the moons surrounding those planets and the moon's orbits being elliptical or spherical, things that the Sumerians could never have known without someone else's help or telescopes. So it just goes on and on. I'm just scratching the surface, but man, is it a bizarre story, and very humiliating too, right? It's very humbling to find out that we're just monkey gold miners, right?
Yes. Well, I feel that way too. And in fact, I always feel like, especially from paranormal investigating, it does change. It changes everything, because just the more that you open up and you find a layer and a layer and a layer, and it goes on and on. But I always think people think it's us and God. That's it. There's nothing in between. There's us and God in the Bible, and that's everything you need. And I think we are not. I'm sure we have some connection to God. I absolutely believe that, but we're not you know what I mean? There's all kinds of levels in there. Just out of curiosity, are you spiritual or religious, or do you believe, or are you just kind of agnostic?
I guess I would call myself a Gnostic as opposed to agnostic. And Gnosticism, you guys out there, the Gnostics were all but completely wiped out by the Christians many millennia ago, right? So, and here's what the Gnostics believed. The Gnostics believed in themselves. They believed that we are all God, very Buddhist in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And God, this eternal being, was bored, basically, for lack of a better term, and decided what better way to fill up the boredom than to become trillions of infinite different types of beings, humans included, who have forgotten that they're God. And we all experience our different lives, whether you're a beetle or a human or something on a different planet. And then you die and report back to the collective consciousness. And all of your experiences are really there for the, I don't want to say entertainment, but that's kind of the idea, right? So you are God, Karen, and I am God, and we're all God. And the fact that you think that you're you and I think that I'm me is really just an illusion. We're really the same thing. Yeah. So
right, we're all one, and that's where Jeff, I'm taking this parapsychology course, and the stuff that we get into about mind over matter is just amazing. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing. I think I'm a Gnostic. Then that sounds right.
Well, gosh, yeah, and it's so fascinating what they believed in, and they told a story, the Gnostics did, which was the Jesus story. But for the Gnostics, Jesus wasn't a historical person. Jesus was an analogy, like the fox and the grapes, right? Just to explain a concept. Later on, the Catholic Church, for instance, adopted it as factual because they wanted people to believe there really was a real Jesus. And he said this, and God said this, and if you don't do this, then you're going to turn into this, and you better listen to us, and
don't have sex.
Control.
Yeah.
And so the Gnostics, they only believed in themselves. They would listen to each other. They would trade off as to who was going to be the one telling stories and be the leader. And then it would switch the next day. And they all knew one thing, that religion is actually the equivalent of slavery. That religion wants you to believe a certain thing and guides you down a certain path, which is the last thing that God actually wants. What God really wants is for everyone to live their life completely individualistically and experience it 100% in your own way, and then die and report back to the collective.
And also in that, they must have had, though, a set of rules, like the 10 Commandments to me are basically your common sense. Don't murder someone. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. Don't, I think, did they have a set of sort of that, or probably with that kind of thinking, you didn't have a lot of people that were committing crimes, you might say, because they weren't under oppression.
So to become Gnostic is basically hidden meaning. The word basically means that you've hit this sort of almost like awakening, an enlightening, a catharsis where you suddenly realize exactly what you really are, which is part of a much larger consciousness, that you're really not just this thing that looks to be a human in a body. And once you awaken to gnosis, knowing, inner knowing, then you're pretty much incapable of doing things like murdering somebody or doing something malevolent.
Because you're hurting yourself.
Yeah, right. So their whole doctrine was really, you know what they really were, Karen? They're very much like comics. The Gnostics, because you get so happy, so fulfilled, so full of peace, and so full of inner knowing, you actually become somewhat of a smartass. So you're almost like a sarcastic smartass, where you get this really funny sense of humor when you're Gnostic, because you're not threatened by anything. You see everything as something that can be, looked at in a kind of a funny way, because you start to realize the joke. And I don't mean the joke as in human life as a joke, but I mean, it does become almost comical when you're not bound to, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible person, and you're you and I'm me, and let's be depressed, and now I got to kill you. Right. I
got to conquer you. And that's true. And a lot of people, well, some people probably do know, when comics are joking with comics, the gloves are off. Anything's open. It's the darkest, funniest.
Totally.
Yeah. It's very, very dark. And, And oh my God, I can't believe we're already at the break again. All right, everybody, hold on one second. I hope you come back again. We're not even done with this episode. I'm like, I hope Jeff is going to come back again. All right, folks, we'll be right back. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call, and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay, so we got to Gnostics. So, and this all is actually makes sense to me of how your worldview looks, which seems very close to mine. Who knew?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't think I could be more open-minded. Pretty open, yeah.
Yeah, both. Who knew? And we're both in the 818. How about that, Jeff?
That's right.
So, I'm a little bit drawn back to the UFO stuff. So, tell us more. Have you? So that kind of got to the place where you put out the Disclosure Project, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then after that, what have you noticed evolved from that time to now? Because I feel like, by the way, I sat in a stealth once. Did you know that? On a USO tour. I got to sit in it. Not that comfortable.
Cool.
Everything but the
Wow.
seats. They didn't work on the seats.
That's so funny.
I feel like even the aliens or the UFO, you know what? I just had this weird flash, but someday alien is going to be politically incorrect. I don't know what we're going to call them. But I feel like they have evolved as we have. Like, in other words, that Roswell spaceship, that's a classic in their museum now.
Sure. I mean, well, yeah,
or maybe not.
Sure. No, I mean, gosh, now we're just, I would be completely speculating, but what I think is super fascinating is some of the witnesses were telling us things like this. And this is about 5 or 6 different witnesses that, again, never met each other. And they were saying that way before we ever landed a person on the moon, we already had the technology to go to and from the moon in a matter of hours, using completely different technology that is not rocket fuel, right? These are completely dramatic aircraft. Now, so what does that mean? That means that it's really kind of an embarrassment, right? So here's Kennedy, who's out of the loop, knows nothing about the UFOs and all of our technology, okay, saying, let's put a man on the moon. And then here's NASA, a bunch of really great engineers, you know, hey, post-World War II, man, we're going to make this thing happen, dude. We're America, right? And they did an amazing job with the technology that they had, creating craft that are basically Fred Flintstone goes to the moon, but God bless them, you know, they did their best. Meanwhile, can you imagine, behind the scenes, the secret government can't tell them, we've already got this stuff, and it's about 1,000 years ahead of the Apollo program. Right. So there's these conflicting worlds that are happening simultaneously. And I think that would be a whole nother episode probably of a podcast. But that story of the moon landing and the moon missions is so riveting because it's not as simple as we didn't go to the moon. It's much more complex and really interesting once I pieced it all together.
Oh my God. Okay. So that's another podcast because I was going to ask that. But now, no. I'm going to take you up on that offer. I'm hooked now. Okay. So, who are, and 2 different things that I'm seeing here. So you have the people that like, we saw the ship, the silos went down. Then you have the individuals that are being abducted and you have the men in black. And is there something when they're just taking the individuals, is that to what they thought? Study our DNA, or we need some of that, or do you have a theory on that?
I would only have a theory because, the disclosure witnesses, we never ran into anybody that was talking about abduction, alien abduction. Now, again, please understand that certainly doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. I have no idea. And I would be speaking out of turn if I were to speculate. The witnesses that we had collected randomly, whoever would talk to us, right? There was no rhyme or reason to this.
And this was really new. This isn't like now. Like I saw Travis Walton speak and he was amazing. But yeah, it's not like now for you young people. This was not talked to. You were nuts. You really were a foil hat person at that time.
Oh yeah. And I don't. And so as far as the Disclosure Project and those witnesses, I don't have any information to lend to the abduction topic. I guess I'm out of the loop on that.
Okay.
I can only speculate. However, I will say one thing kind of related. One of our witnesses worked on 2 different projects. One was called Moon Dust, another one called Moonfly, I believe. Blue Fly and Moon Dust. And so here's what it was. They were part of UFO recovery teams, almost like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, if you're older like Karen and I, and you were back in the 70s and saw that movie with Richard Dreyfuss, where if an alien craft were to land, or crash land more specifically, the government, or the secret government in this case, would set up a fake scenario, like there was a chemical spill, there was an accidental radioactive nuclear thing, right, to keep people away. and they would create a biological hazard or something to keep people away, and then they would reclaim this technology. That's what this guy's job was through the military. And he was asked by a reporter that actually took the Disclosure Project seriously and showed up to our press conference, well, what do these aliens look like? And his response was, well, that's very hard to answer. When I left the program in the 70s, there were dozens of identified species of alien. So which one are you talking about? I don't know. Which one are you talking about? Right. So again, fascinating, right? There's just a rich tapestry of alien life that's out there. Again, why haven't we seen them? Why aren't they here every day? Why don't they land? Well, again, it's the human ego that makes us believe that they would reveal themselves to us, and that somehow this planet must be super, super important. You guys don't realize, and a lot of people don't understand, there's not just, billions of planets, there's billions of galaxies of planets. So the Earth is not at the pinnacle or the center of everything, you guys. It's a tiny grain of sand on a beach, on top of a beach, within a beach, within a beach. So
I had a guy on talking about and his girlfriend or his wife was doesn't matter. She was an abductee, and they would be driving, and she would say, pull over and take a picture. There's a spaceship right there. And he would say, I don't see anything. And she would say, pull over and take a picture. And he sent me the picture, and he couldn't believe in the picture that whatever she was talking about was there. So there's, which is a million different, I believe that when you go investigating, looking for ghosts, some people are just on the same vibration as whatever we're looking for, and some are not. In fact, it's fascinating. In my parapsychology class, they do tests on people that we call it psi. That's my scientific. We call it psi, which is psychic stuff. And they have a random generator figure out heads or tails on a coin. And they say, they figure out by chance how many would you get right if you were calling it heads or tails. And then the people that believe in psi always score much higher than the people that don't. And they actually have a category called no psi, where you get every single one wrong. Like it's almost like against the odds that you get everyone wrong. And they think that somebody that's very psychic that is denying it.
Sure.
But I really think, when we try to calculate, in fact, in my class, I'm not really supposed to say vibration, but I use it out here. Who is vibrating on what level that contacts that dimension that goes through, you know what I mean? It's so complex and it's so far beyond our comprehension that I still do think they're here. I still think the aliens are here, like in the room.
Well, for sure. Well, see, and you're completely correct. And I know that sounds crazy to people, but please understand, a lot of people don't understand that when physicists first discovered that a photon can coexist as a wave and a particle, that wasn't just like, oh, how interesting. Anyway, next. No, that was a completely mind-bending, a slap in the face to our reality. The fact that it can vibrate and become a wave, but it's also a particle at the same time. And photon pairs can be entangled at distances that don't even matter. You could be 30,000 light years away from your entangled partner, and whatever happens to one instantly happens to the other. What does all this tell us? It tells us what Karen just said, which is we can be existing and are existing in the same space as infinite other things. So I know, hard to imagine, but by God, it's true. And mind does affect reality.
Well, in the woo-woo world, that's also Reiki and healing. I'm doing it here, you're feeling it there, and thought. That's like, it's so amazing. In fact, Jeff, you bring sometimes I can't explain, and you're like bringing the science in to what like that. What that is. It's like when you think of someone, I haven't heard from so-and-so from high school, and the phone rings and it's them. I feel like that's that same theory.
Sure. Guys, one way to think of it is you have literally trillions of little cells in your body that are all individually alive. And they don't know that they make up a human body. and you can't feel them inside of you. So you guys are coexisting. You literally have billions and billions of little cities inside of you that are all alive and individuals creating little co-ops and little worlds, and you're completely unaware of them. But without them, you wouldn't be you and they wouldn't be them. So that's just one example. Now take that ecosystem even further. You're just a little person on a planet, and that planet's part of a solar system. So that's a system. And then that system inside of a galaxy, that's a system. And then that system within the universe, that's a system. And that universe within a universe. So you see, we can go infinitely one way or the other. And there you go.
You know what? I can't. I know we're coming up on the hour, so I have to. We have to talk about Majestic 12, but also just a weird. Did you see Westworld on HBO?
Sure.
I think we are the androids or the aliens that are turning. I think in the big picture, because first of all, I don't think we have the brain capacity. Like if this was really unraveled in front of us, we couldn't understand it.
Sure.
Like we're getting pieces of it, but if it was really the whole system, we couldn't. We're not there yet. But I feel like in Westworld, the ones that they made, I think that's us. Like I think I don't know how else to say that, but I feel like somebody else is kind of developed us and made us. And this is what's going on right now is we're waking up. I always say I'm the mean African-American hooker. That's who I am.
I love it. Right on.
And I don't want to run out of time. Jeff, you have to come back. But I want everybody to know, tell everybody about Majestic 12.
Sure, you guys. Right now it's a very small web series. It's a little bit of a labor of love and a little experiment that's going to expand. It is it's what I learned in the Disclosure Project, which is that the Navy actually has its own space fleet, and the Navy itself doesn't realize it, but divisions within the Navy do. And for decades, we have had an actual space fleet that is docked in the outer atmosphere, and we actually have naval space ships. I know that sounds crazy, sounds kind of Scientology, sounds like a movie, but it's true. And there are officers that are terrestrial, Earth officers, but they're called non-terrestrial officers because they're stationed off Earth. And the main goal was to protect us from an extraterrestrial threat, which there really isn't much of one as far as we can tell. And so I took a little bit of a comedy stand on that. And I said, wouldn't that be funny if we had a pilot who was kind of a slacker, kind of a stoner, and he was really smart, and he was able to get a position as a pilot on one of these jump ships in outer space, but he just wants to kind of goof around and drink with his buddies and party on the backside of the moon with other aliens. And much to the chagrin of the admiral of this naval space fleet. And so that was the impetus for Majestic 12. It's a really fun little series that you guys can check out on the web. If you type in on YouTube, if you type in Majestic 12 web series or webisodes, you'll find it pretty easily. Hope you guys enjoy it. It stars a whole bunch of my friends, and it's funny. It's a comedy sci-fi series. Again, we're getting a bigger and bigger budget. So by gosh, maybe by this time next year, it'll even be something that would be Netflix worthy or something. So we'll see where it goes.
And do you take donations, or is that being funded by somebody else?
So far, because I already have a garage full of sci-fi crap, and I was able to go on Amazon and get a $30 green screen, and I can use my iPhone to shoot this. It's all been zero budget to no budget. I think I've spent maybe $300 or $400 on the whole thing. So this is what you can do with basically for free. And by God, I mean, I can't even imagine, Karen, if I had $10,000, good Lord, I could make an epic movie.
Well,
so,
you just blew my mind, because my little Paranormal Karens, my comedy videos, I just shoot them on my iPhone and I edit them, and everybody's like, I can't believe you did it on your iPhone. But now that you've told me that's on a green screen, because that is fantastic.
Sure.
It looks so good, Jeff. Now my mind is blown in so many ways.
I'm so excited to hear that. Yeah, we're just going to keep making it better, and we're having a great time. And again, our mutual buddy, Dean Lacrone, is on it, and a wonderful FX artist, Adam Murillo, who's just insane, just incredibly talented, making aliens for me and all kinds of props. And just I'm hooked into a really cool community. So I'm very glad to be able to plug it, and I hope you guys will watch it.
All right. Well, we're fans. We're going to keep checking in here. I said that me and my many personalities are fans. And
Nice.
we're going to keep checking in with you. Yeah. You know what, Jeff? As soon as I get back from the road, I'd love to talk to you about moon landing stuff. Thank you so much, Jeff.
You bet. So excited to be on my first podcast. I hope we can do many more. And thank you, everybody, for listening in, Karen.
Oh, yeah.
Take care.
And we'll talk about the J-Rods next time. Thanks, you guys. Check me out. Check out Paranormal Karen. If you can leave me a 5-star or 1-star review, whatever you can, it helps people find me in iTunes. I will see you on the road, paranormalkaren.com or karenrontowski.com. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. And we'll see you all next week.